One of the things that Carl Jung said that I thought was really interesting when he was talking about the Oedipal situation in families, I never forgot this. So the Oedipal situation, roughly speaking, is when, I'll lay out the classic story, is when a child is seriously overprotected, usually a male child by his mother. Now the reverse can be the case, and it can be a female child by the mother and all of that, but I'll just talk about the classic case to begin with. Now, what Freud observed was that there were usually not very good boundaries in families like that. And so the relationship between the husband and the wife was either strained or non-existent. And the wife would often turn to the child to be what she isn't getting from the husband. And so there's a great South Park episode about this. A wonderful South Park episode where I don't remember, that horrible little guy is that's him, yeah. And his mother brings in the dog whisperer to train him, and it's a brilliant episode. If you want to learn about the Freudian Oedipal situation, you watch that, you've got it down cold, because she brings in this expert who then she wants to have an affair with, so that's a boundary issue. And he basically separates her son from him and imposes the same discipline on him that he would impose on a bad dog. Although he also trains the dog's owners all the time, because maybe it's not the dog, maybe it's the owner. There's a horse whisperer movie too about the original horse whisperer that does a beautiful job of laying that out too, because he's very good at fixing problem horses and unbelievably good at diagnosing psychopathology on the part of the owner. He's got a gift for it. But anyways, what happened? And then behind those two things, behind the shadow and the anima and the animus, there's a final archetype, which is the archetype of the self. And that's, Jung believed that the self was what you were as a totality. And that's a hard thing to understand, but you could think about it this way. You could think about the self as the total of what you are now, plus the total of all those things that you could still be. So it would be you as a reality, plus you as potential. And that's a strange idea, right? Because we don't really know how to understand the idea of potential as modern empirical people, because potential, virtually by definition, is not yet manifest, and also not a straightforward thing to either measure or conceptualize. By the same token, everybody acts as if they have potential, unrealized potential. And so Jung generated up a category to account for that, which he felt was expressed in all sorts of symbolic ways. So for example, the wise old man, like the wizards in the movies that all of you have seen in the last 5 years, it's always the same wizard. Sometimes it's even the same actor. It's like, that's an archetype of the wise old man. And for Jung, Christ was an archetype of the self as well. And I told you why that was to some degree, and it's partly because the phoenix is also an archetype of the self, because the phoenix is something that can die and be reborn. And so the phoenix stands for the part of your personality that can let one thing go, one part of you, which is an alive part, can let that go and burn up, so to speak, so that something new can be born. Because you very seldom gain something before you let something else go. That's partly because what you already assume can be the worst impediment that you have to learning something new. And it's complicated because sometimes what you know worked in the past. You know, so you can think about that. Maybe you're a perfectly well-adapted 11-year-old and you're still acting that way when you're 15. It's like, well, it's hard to let that go because it worked and you put a lot of effort into it. But unless you... It's not an accident that the axiomatic Western individual is someone who was unfairly nailed to a cross and tortured. It's like, yes, right, exactly. So what do you do about that? Well, I thought about that for a long time too. It's like, well, you don't get together in a damn mob, because all that does is allow you to be as horrible as you could possibly imagine and suffer from none of the consequences. That's a bad idea. So how about we don't do that? Well, there's a deep idea in the West too. It's like, pick up your damn suffering and bear it. And try to be a good person so you don't make it worse. Well, that's a truth. You know, I read a lot about the terrible things that people have done to each other. You just cannot even imagine it. It's so awful. So you don't want to be someone like that. Now, do you have a reason to be? Yes! You have lots of reasons to be. God, there's reasons to be resentful about your existence. Everyone you know is going to die. You know, you too. And there's going to be a fair bit of pain along the way, and lots of it's going to be unfair. It's like, yeah, no wonder you're resentful. It's like, act it out and see what happens. You make everything you're complaining about infinitely worse. There's this idea that hell is a bottomless pit, and that's because no matter how bad it is, some stupid son of a bitch like you could figure out a way to make it a lot worse. So you think, well, what do you do about that? Well, you accept it. That's what life is like. It's suffering.